Also, did we want to talk at all about Proverbs 31 woman? Because that's like...
Well, we have one right here.
Aaron's favorite topic.
I'm saying because so many...
I am the Proverbs 31 woman. Hello, and welcome back to episode 14 of season 3 of the Light and Salty Co podcast, where we're doing our Bible book club, which means we're going through a book a week of the Bible. I can't talk today.
It's a mouthful. It's okay.
This week we are going through Proverbs. Mm-hmm. Who wants to tell us what a proverb is?
Well, first we're going to talk about the genre of Proverbs. So we're headed into wisdom books. Technically, we've already started the wisdom books. Job was wisdom. Mm-hmm. But we are focusing on the genre for Proverbs because Proverbs is like super wise and practical, and it's definitely a book of wisdom, so it just made sense to talk about wisdom here. Wisdom, just essentially, it's the Hebrew philosophy around like how to live well, mm-hmm. and how to live how God wants us to live, and how to live successfully, all those kind of things. There's 3 categories that of questions, I guess, that wisdom answers. I'll give you the words, but don't, if you ignore these words, it's fine. Just know that the questions are what get answered. But there's epistemology, and that just means can we know truth? And if so, how can we know it? Then there is metaphysics, and that's answering the questions about how does the world work? And then there's ethics, which I think we all know that word.
You know that word? Yeah.
Ethics. So it talks about what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
And so the wisdom literature focuses on those questions and answering those questions in different books of the Bible, and different, once again, just like poetry, there's a lot of books of the Bible that include wisdom. But it all kind of goes to one of those 3 areas. And then just like with poetry, wisdom often uses literary devices in order to help emphasize their point. In wisdom, a lot of times it's metaphor and figures of speech. And so an example of that actually is from the example I'm using is actually from the book of Matthew, because it's something Jesus says, but it's a wisdom, it's a wise thing that he's telling people to do. And he uses a metaphor, and when he says, don't be careful not to throw your pearls to swine. He's not telling us don't throw your jewel necklaces at a bunch of pigs. He's saying be careful where you spend your energy and your time and your effort, and don't use it on people that aren't in a place where they can digest what you're about to give them. So don't, if people aren't ready or capable of hearing what it is you have to say, it's just going to be a waste of your time. Right. So that's what he's saying. It has nothing to actually do with pigs, but that's what we mean by wisdom. It's like a figure of speech or metaphor. So symbolic. Yeah. And Proverbs is full of it. So
along with we kind of talked about this with Job, is that there are brachial. Wow.
I don't even know what you're trying to say.
Ironic for the book of wisdom. I don't know what I'm saying.
Hebrews is our first language, guys. English is hard.
That was me mixing the 2 words. Practical and speculative.
Yeah.
So Job is more speculative, and it's focusing on suffering and the goodness of God and sovereignty. But Proverbs is going to focus on more of the practical wisdom in your life.
This is how to live well.
Yeah. So one thing to remember, though, is that it's they're not promises. So it's not
you do this.
It's not it's not a formula with a guaranteed end result. So these are wise sayings that are meant to help our character, our attitude, our behavior. Just it just doesn't guarantee the outcome.
So God, it's not God writing this book in the sense that if you do these things, I'm going to make it happen.
An example I hear a lot is
raise up.
We all know in life right now, hopefully, I hope all you know and all you listening know that if you cheat on your spouse, things are likely to go bad. Mm-hmm. Is there a chance that things go bad for you, even if you've been faithful to your spouse the entire time? Yes. Is there a chance that you cheat on your spouse and you get to take it to your grave and nobody ever finds out? Yes. But the probability is that if you cheat on your spouse, things are going to go bad. That's what we mean by it's not a promise. It's not a guarantee that following these things are going to lead to a certain outcome, but it's a strong possibility.
Well, and also, like, I think that we take them, even like the verse, like, train up a child in the way he should go and he will not depart from it. There's plenty of children that have departed from it.
Yes.
But it is still the
It's
probability.
a principle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So
it's a principle.
Proverbs are probabilities, they're principles, they're not promises.
Which is disappointing because even during COVID, well, no, I'm sorry. To me, it's disappointing to find out because I was a new Christian. 2019, COVID hit, and I remember writing Proverbs on Post-it notes all over my house, trying to have God's word, and somehow that was going to protect me and make things better. Obviously, baby Christian, I didn't know things back then, but
I mean, it is good to keep at the forefront of your mind because they are like, it is wise. It is still wisdom literature. It's just not like
You can't be angry at God if you do everything right according to Proverbs and it still doesn't work out or things still go bad. You can't be like, God, what the heck?
Exactly.
I did this. Why did you do it
Because
for me?
in the first book of wisdom that we read, Job, the answer is we don't know the big picture. So even if it goes differently than we think.
Well, like Job, right? He was perfectly righteous. He was wise but
God knows the biggest picture, the full picture. And so we still trust him, even if it doesn't go.
Proverbs is believed to be mainly written by Solomon. As we know, he's the wisest.
King of them all.
Which makes me kind of laugh
them all.
because he makes a lot of mistakes. There are some that seem to be written by other
He doesn't
authors.
seem to live by all of the wisdom.
Not
I mean,
through to the
I feel like
end.
most people are like that. Oftentimes we know better than what we do,
Yes,
so can't blame them.
Do as I say, not as I do. But there are some others, and some scholars believe Solomon added them and wanted to give them credit. So mainly Solomon though. But wisdom to us may mean things like the word wisdom. We think of like knowledge or discernment, but the word used in Hebrew actually means a lot more than that. It's more like translated as a skill, which is a skill lost on a lot of us.
Although wisdom is portrayed as a woman.
That's true.
Well, although skill is something you learn. It's not an inborn thing.
Which
so I
should
mean, it's
be
a hopeful
encouragement.
thing. Yeah,
it's something you learn and it's something you practice.
I was going to say, so it's not just something you know in your head, but it's something
so it's
you
not just like, oh, you're a wise person. I'm not. Like I know in the New Testament it talks about like some people I think are maybe gifted with more wisdom.
Right.
You know, that is like a spiritual gift.
Solomon asked for wisdom and got it.
But everyone can learn it.
But that's the only promise that's guaranteed in the Bible is
to be answered with that prayer.
Yeah, is if you pray and ask for wisdom, you are guaranteed to get it.
Yeah. So when we talk about wisdom, it's not just supposed to be something that stays in your head. It's something that you're actively working on. You're living it out. And in Israel, artists and craftsmen were also described with the same Hebrew word. So wisdom proverbs helps the reader practice developing their skills in wisdom, as we said, for living righteous lives. And so also with this, when we're talking about practicing wisdom, keep that in mind when you're reading the Proverbs, because there are certain things that you like people will come across and be like, well, that is so contradictory. Like literally one verse will say, answer a fool.
Answer a fool.
And then the next verse will say, do not answer a fool. And you're like, well, which one is it? And something that Aaron and I were talking about is just like, we do the same thing with our little quips and metaphors. Like when we say something like, for our example, like slow and steady wins the race, you have to apply that in the right situation. Like if you're doing a sprint, like slow and steady is not going to win that race.
Right. We're talking about a marathon.
But if you're doing a marathon, that's where you want. So like keep that in mind when you're reading. They were meant to be applied
to certain situations.
Use your wisdom. Context
matters.
Use your discernment and your wisdom to decide, like, is this a place where I should answer a fool, or is this a place that I should not throw my pearls before swine? Right. So keep that in mind. Is like you might think, you said the Bible didn't contradict itself, and it doesn't. You just have to.
Yeah, they're meant to be used in different situations.
Yeah, both of those things are wise at
exactly
their own time.
in their own time.
You just need to know when to apply.
And you just have to figure it on your own.
By practicing.
So one thing that I thought is interesting is that other nations had their own proverbs and ancient sayings, but Israel's all point back to Yahweh. So there is a huge difference between worldly wisdom and godly wisdom. And so that's the other thing that you're going to take away from this is godly wisdom.
Yes.
So yeah, the original.
And oftentimes it's contradicting
from the worldly wisdom.
That's
true.
true.
Yeah. So the original readers would have been the Israelites living before the kingdom split and their nation was prosperous, but these were also passed down. And like the final compilation of the book was after the northern kingdom was exiled. So the northern kingdom gets exiled a couple hundred years before the southern kingdom. So just keep in mind that this was meant to be like, hey guys, let's
you ain't living too wise.
I think we need some wisdom because look at what's happening to us. Look at how the kings are leading us. Look at where we're going astray. And how different would our lives be if we actually followed the wisdom of God. So yeah.
And I think too, it's just like in our current society with like social media, like everyone trying to influence you to some direction, like how important it is to be like, okay, I want God's wisdom. Yeah. And again, sometimes it aligns with maybe what you're hearing, but like, to have a foundation of, okay, this is a baseline.
Yeah. Well, like you said, because it is often so opposite from the world, like I think we have to keep in mind that like success in the world's eyes versus success in God's kingdom is very different.
Very different.
So you're going to think this seems contradictory to what would bring me success. And oftentimes it's because you're looking at the wrong form of success.
Yeah. So looking at the different themes, so there are many repetitive themes throughout the book of Proverbs. And so one of the main ones is the fear of the Lord. And so people are like, oftentimes if you're maybe a new believer, you're not, you come across and it's just like, oh, I'm supposed to be afraid of God. Like, and that's not what it means. So the fear of the Lord is more of a reverence for him. It's an acknowledgement that he knows more than you do, that he's above you. Yeah. It's a respect for him. Recognize he's the creator. He's right about everything. Yeah. And we need to humble ourselves and come under his lordship. Yeah. And so that's, in the context, that's what the fear of the Lord means. In Proverbs itself, it actually calls it like loving what God loves and hating what God hates. Yeah. So it's coming into agreement. If God says it's evil, it's evil. If God says it's sin,
regardless
it's sin.
of your opinion.
Regardless of your opinion. And so, and loving what he loves too, because sometimes he loves things that we're like, oh man, like, I don't want to do this. So it's again, that just humbling yourself and recognizing and putting him in his rightful place. Another theme will be like money and finances, how to handle that well, laziness, wisdom versus folly. So there's a lot of contrasting ideas within Proverbs. So the rich and the poor, again, wisdom, folly. There's a lot of like practical advice on relationships, whether that's friendship, marriage, dealing with neighbors, children, women, and lust, not being taken in by an adultery, a woman. So for men, I guess maybe, women can reapply that in their own way. And then another one is like the power of the tongue. So like how you use your words. So there's a number of themes, but those are some of the main ones. I know for our Bible school, we actually had an assignment where we had to choose one of the themes and trace it through the whole book and then like write out all of them and then see it's like, okay, on the power of the tongue or on finances, what is all the wisdom from Proverbs on this topic? So it's,
what did you choose?
I think I may have done finances actually and money.
Oh, we had to highlight all of them, so I don't know.
Really? You were only like 1 year. Yeah, we were only 1 year apart. Interesting. But anyways, so it's like if you just want more of like a word study or like it's a cool way to just dive in deeper. That is cool. And look at those different topics. But yeah, those are some of the themes.
Some of the themes which point us to Jesus. Basically, Proverbs sets the standard and Jesus embodies it, right? He lived the perfect Proverbs life. He was obedient, humble, truthful, God-fearing, just, all of these things that if we were truly living a wise life and following God, that we would be. And then a specific spot where we can see Jesus. So Proverbs 8:22 and onward, it parallels John 1, where it's like in the beginning was the Word. One thing though, when you're reading 8:22 and paralleling it to Jesus, we also want to reiterate, we are not saying Jesus is a created being. It's poetry. Right. It's poetry, right? And then also Proverbs 8:35, where it says, "Whoever finds me finds life. All who hate me love death." So that's very much
Yep.
Jesus's message. So yeah, even in the Old Testament, there he is again.
There he is.
There
He's popping up.
Keeps on showing up, that guy. Okay, so as you're reading through the Proverbs, there's some really simple application questions, because this is such practical, like Heidi said, practical versus speculative. It's like, it's very obvious what the proverb is saying. Like, do this or don't do this. So literally
Not
just
much
think,
interpretation needed.
literally your questions should be, how do I apply this to my life? But something also that you can kind of keep in mind is, if you come across certain proverbs that you're meditating on, think about, like, have you seen this truth played out, where somebody did follow this and it worked out? Have you seen it where it didn't, and it, like, somebody followed this out and it didn't? Have you seen places where somebody didn't follow it and it went poorly for them? So just kind of like paying attention to those kind of things. But yeah, it's not, the study here is not super hard, because it really is so practical and so straightforward that it's just like, how can I put this into my life right now? How can I better steward my finances? How can I better keep control of my tongue and what I say to other people? How can I, how can I raise my children the best way? And, those kind of things. So keeping those in mind. And then for key verses, if you're marking those down, I have two. Essentially, they say the exact same thing. So you can mark down one or both. I mark down both. But it's chapter 1, verse 7 and chapter 9, verse 10. They both say that the fear of the Lord is where is the beginning of knowledge and wisdom. So
We're supposed to pay attention to repetition when we read the Bible.
that's right.
So
Yeah.
I highlighted both.
So as Chelsea was mentioning, the fear of the Lord isn't being afraid of the Lord, but it's just respecting his
healthy
and
fear.
and having reverence for what he's saying. And it's saying that's where your knowledge and your wisdom is going to begin. Because if we don't start with a respect for what he says, then we're going to fall into what the world says is wisdom.
We're not
then
going to trust what he says.
that's just going to lead us down the wrong path. So
Well, that's why I think, like, even throughout Proverbs, like, it constantly says, like, wisdom is calling out to you. It's like it's like he wants to give you wisdom. Like,
Yes.
that's how he created us. Like, in the garden, he was walking with Adam and Eve, like, teaching them and giving them wisdom. And, like, through the Holy Spirit, we have that every day, every moment of every day with us. And so it's like, but we have to actually respond,
Pursue it.
and receive the wisdom, whether we like it or not, too.
And like use it, like a muscle, like
Yeah.
work it out and
Also, did
stronger.
we want to talk at all about Proverbs 31 woman? Because that's like, well, we have one right here.
Aaron's favorite topic.
I'm saying because so many.
I am the Proverbs 31 woman.
No, because so many women read that and they're discouraged.
That's what they think is
Yes.
the standard
And
for
they-
themselves.
Yeah, and it's just like, how am I ever going to live up to that? And it's like, that's not what it's meant. That's not supposed to necessarily be like one woman in one stage of her life.
Right.
And so, like, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
like, to kind of dig into that and explain what
There's an
just
inside joke
happened
there.
So Proverbs 31, as you get there, you'll see it's a list of, like, a noble wife, or and it says
The
that
epitome
she
of the perfect wife.
It says she gets up early and she stays up late and she has a business and she owns land and she raises her children and she takes care of her husband and she does this and this and this and this, and let me list
And
out
doesn't
one
nap.
and she and she never like, and it's like this. It is, for a lot of women, will look at that and think, oh my gosh, this is an unachievable list. Because
Or a man.
Or
will
men
be
be like that.
yeah. And so that's where the joke came from, is because men think that they're giving women compliment when they're like, oh,
You're a
you're
Proverbs 31.
And my response always, and it's true if you knew the four of us, these three women are beautiful, gentle, feminine souls. And I am Jael from Judges 4. I will more likely put a tent peg through your head than I am to be the Proverbs 31 woman. So that's where that came from, is when anybody says, I'm a Proverbs 31 woman, I always say, no, I'm a Judges 4 woman. And I actually have a shirt that says that, but that's where that came from. But the spoiler of this is it is unachievable, because that isn't the list of what you're supposed to be. Now, I want to be careful how I say this, because I've only heard this taught once, and so I don't want everybody to change their theology around this particular passage. But I have heard it taught. There is an argument about the fact that it has nothing to do with a woman to begin with, because throughout the Proverbs, wisdom is portrayed as a woman.
Yeah, I've
and
heard
so
it that
a
way
wise
too.
person would be doing this. A wise person would be doing that. Now, having said that, that only came from one pastor that I've heard of, and every commentary I've ever read since then has not necessarily it's not refuted that and said that's not true, but it hasn't. I've not seen that
Something to
anywhere
consider.
else.
Well-
But it is something to consider. But even if it is about a woman and how to be a good wife, it's like Chelsea said, it's stages. It's different. It's once again, just like the other Proverbs, it's certain things get applied at certain times. So if you have children
That's your
and you're
focus.
like, I want to stay at home and raise my children and get up early and take care of them, which means I can't be out of the house having a job and creating textiles and sewing things like this perfect woman does. So be it. It doesn't make you less of a wife. It doesn't make you less of a woman. So
Also, too,
yeah.
in the context of the culture where this happened, like,
Yes.
it was very different. Where like you probably would kind of work in the home and sew while you have kids.
Right.
Like it is a different
It's a
context
different-
than what we live in today as well.
And so the thing is like, this is meant to be an encouragement. Like, don't read that and feel like I don't measure up. Like,
Well,
that's not what
I'm
this
the
the
is.
other
lazy
thing,
person
too.
rolling over in
Yeah.
bed.
The other thing too is that is actually another acrostic poem. That part of it,
Oh, there you go.
and then which we mentioned in Psalms.
Yeah, where it
each
goes
letter starting
the
with that.
letter of the Hebrew language.
But also, I have read in a commentary that like the beginning of Proverbs starts with a father giving advice to a son, and then the end is from a woman. So it's basically saying wisdom is for everybody, like
right.
men, women.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, because like the part that, and I mean, maybe this is actually a question I have, so maybe somebody here knows the answer. But the part that always got me was it specifically talks about her owning land, and I'm like, back then women couldn't own
couldn't.
land. What are we talking about here?
Yeah.
So I don't know where that falls in. So maybe that does lead credibility to the idea that this isn't about a woman at all. It's
Embodying
about wisdom and what a wise person would do. So. Yeah, just don't measure yourself or your success as a wife or a woman based on how much of Proverbs 31 you match up to. Measure your success as a woman as to whether or not you're willing to put a tent peg through your enemy's
Exactly.
head. And
Are
I
you ready
am a
to-
successful woman because I'm willing.
are you willing to feed the milk and then
Feed him milk.
drive the tent
and,
peg?
yeah, drive a tent peg through his head.
That's
We
right.
all have our role in the group.
That's right. I'm Peter. I'll chop your ear off. Okay. I think that's all, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Enjoy Proverbs.
Bye.
Bye.